So it didn't go very well. The thing is, I wore my, the Phantom of the Opera mask. I wore that on the scarred side, right? And then, turned on the webcam, and she saw and thought it was weird, and wasn't interested in it. And I asked her, I was like, "Why is this a problem? Women love Gerard Butler, right?" I gotta say, she was honest. She's just like, "Yeah, but the part that I can see, you're no Gerard Butler." So I was like, okay. Right, so I guess I'm not gonna do dating apps for a little while. Is all I'm saying. Oh, you're ready? Okay. 2, 3, 1. Hey kids, welcome back to another exciting episode of No Subs, No Dubs. I'm your host, Casey Kidd, the Kamikaze Kidd, and let's just get into it. If you don't know what this show's about, I, your host, watch a movie, a foreign flick, a foreign film. What are they called? Flicks, right? I think that's what Kevin Smith would call them, is a flick. A foreign film or an international movie is what we watch here, what I watch here. And I watch them without subtitles and without dubs. And then the point of this podcast is I spoil it, or attempt to spoil it. Isn't that right, Bucka Boy? Attempt to spoil the movie and then review it. And that's pretty much it. Is that a good intro? We don't have any shout outs this time. So no shout outs. Not really much going on with me. Everything's been hunky-dory, right? All right. Today we are talking about Lady Snowblood. Oh, I guess there has been kind of a slight, it wasn't done last week, this podcast, and now we're going a little late, and that's because work. That's because of work and jobs and such. So this might be an every other week podcast. The goal is every week, but it might turn into every other week. Well, sorry. And then, what's the other thing I'm reading here right now? It says, promote our stuff. Patreon.com/no-subs-no-dubs and Twitter.com or x.com/no-subs-no-dubs-pod, P-O-D. That's enough of that. We need to talk about this movie, Lady Snowblood, which, spoiler alert, is a good movie. It's a really good movie. This movie's heavily referenced in Kill Bill, which is directed by that Quentin Tarantino. It's honestly, in some ways, almost directly like ripping it off. It's very, very similar, at least the first part, stylistically and story-wise. It's very like so Lady Snowblood's essentially about Lady Snowblood, who's the daughter of Madam Snowblood, the daughter of this lady who gets her jimmies rustled in a profound way, and she gives birth in a prison, I think, like a women's prison in Japan. And then the baby comes out, and the whole point is like, hey, baby, I'm dying now, but I'm naming you Lady Snowblood, and you are going to take vengeance when you're old enough. And that's, I guess, so she was born in prison, is all I'm saying. Let's actually talk about this, because the first bit of this movie is you hear a baby crying in the prison, and there's this really cool, like, it's very interestingly styled. The snow is clearly fake. Like, I think they must have used some sort of screen. I don't know if they had blue or green screens back then or something. They might have, right? Or a projection. It almost looks like a projection, but there's snow, and where the windows should be, they're all open. I'm like, you need to shut those. It's cold. This lady is having a baby. There's this pregnant lady. This is Lady Snowblood's mom, and she's not having a good time. And the snow that's falling turns red, and there's the title sequence, right? And you're like, this is going to be awesome. It looks cool already. And then we go to Lady Snowblood. This is in the future, right? That was in the past, where Lady Snowblood is walking around at night in this, like, little village area. And she's got a parasol. She's got an umbrella that she's going around because she doesn't want the snow to touch her delicate Snowblood skin. she stands in the way of these traveling people, and this group of travelers come in, and they attack. She just destroys them, and there's tons of squirting blood. There's so much blood, it's ridiculous. It's just squirting out everywhere and whatnot, and it's going against the snow, or the fake snow, and it looks really cool. So they're getting all cut up and killed, and then there's this old man. He's in the cart, right? Because there's always a group of people who are traveling in these. Oh, it's like a historical piece, right? What do they call it? Where it's one of these movies where it's like from the 1615 or some sort of thing. So it's all swords and old-timey villages and everything. So it's not modern looking. It was made in, I think, the 70s or 60s or something. I don't know. We didn't do very good research, did we, Baka Boy? Maybe a week off has made me super rusty about this. Let's cut all that stuff out. And this time, since we've had a week off, you need to cut this out for real. And we'll just move on. So there's tons of blood squirting. The old guy in the carriage gets out, and he's this old fedora-wearing man. And he tries to fight her, but he's old, so he gets, like, chopped up pretty fast. But when he's dying, he looks up at her, and he's like, "Who are you? Who are you?" And she tells him, "I'm Lady Snowblood." And it's like, okay, cool. Then here's more of the title. So, like, the title comes in earlier, and it turns all bloody. And then there's actual titles, and it's like, you're seeing Japan, right? And there's some island murder lounge music going on. So, it's kind of interesting. The music's pretty good throughout. It's kind of relaxing. It's all this, like, island music to me, I think. So I like the music. And the movie looks beautiful, by the way. This my note says movie looks beautiful. So there you go. And we go into Lady Snowblood, Lady S. That's what I wrote. Lady S is training, and there's some narration. I don't know what they're saying in the narration, probably. Lady Snowblood is going for vengeance, and this is her training flashback sequence. And she has this flashback real quick where she's weed whacking her sword. She's doing sword practice, and she picks up a flower while she's an adult, and then she looks at the flower, and she sees all the weeds around it, and it goes back to her childhood where she's weed whacking away for her training. Which, if you're using swords, that is how you train, right? You get a wooden sword at first, but then you get like an actual saber, an actual sword with steel. And then you whack the hell out of stuff. And you mostly just whack weeds, and you get paid for it, and then you get better at, killing people. So weed whacking's the first step. Then she, in the future, when she's an adult, right? So flashback flashes, then comes back, she's an adult. She goes to some poor village and speaks with this soup lady, right? And there's all these poor people all around, and the poor menfolk follow her around, and they go to the forest because they want to rustle her jimmies. And she is not about this. So she fights them. After they dance around for a little bit, which is kind of odd, they dance around like, hey, they do the rustling jimmies peacocking dance before they actually get into it. But she uses the parasol style. She's got this parasol, and she just demolishes them. And then that's when the poor village king stops the fight. He comes in, he makes some sort of speech, and then he invites Lady Snowblood to his home for some exposition time. And this is where we get a flashback, another flashback. You already got, like, what, 2 already started in on this? You got the baby birth situation, weed whacking situation. Now we got a news bulletin moment, and it's probably about World War II. They're doing the, back in the 1940s, there was all that kind of stuff, right? It's probably about World War II. You're getting into, there's this family that goes on a picnic, and they're obviously a rich family. They're all dressed in white. The father's in white, and then this gang of no-goods, they show up, this bad gang, and they show up, and they're like, we're going to mess with this family. So they go over and they kill the father, right? And there's a mother and a son there, by the way, too. They kill the father, and there's lots of blood because the white suit shows up a lot of blood. I'm like, That's why there's so much white, so the red just pops. Hopefully it doesn't pop the filter, right? That's a huge spike in the audio. And there's no, like, understanding why they killed him. I'm assuming they're a rice gang, and this family owns rice, and they're rich or something. There's something with rice later on. Something there. But they just kill him, probably because he works for the government, and they don't like the government. Something like that. All that stuff happened. Lady Snowblood has another, like, flashback to a guy ringing a bell, and she prays at a grave for a little bit, and the grave is actually really well shot and pretty and stuff. So she prays at the grave, and then there's some narration, and we're back to the pregnant lady. So it's all kind of all over the place, right? We're here, then we're here, then we're here. This is an easy birth. She's in prison, and the baby just doesn't slide out, It's kind of stuck in there, and it's grabbing with a fist in one hand, like I'm not gonna let go of this. And then there's another flashback, and this is a Jimmy rustling scene, so be warned. There's some rustling Jimmys, and this is Lady Snowblood's mother is in a granary, what do they call it, windmill, where there's a bunch of rice and stuff, and she's getting rustled, and the 5 gang members, the rice gang as I'm calling them, they're all watching one guy get it on, and there's a lady there, and she's smiling all big, and she looks pretty evil. But outside of that windmill, we also see that her son, the boy's dead, right? So he's just laying there dead. And I was like, this isn't good. I see why Lady Snowblood has to take vengeance for her mother. And then her mother goes to prison, probably because, or is it one of those crazy houses? Did they have crazy houses back then? It's like they got her to go to prison. There's some more exposition on who the no good guys are, and the girl as well. And I think they're a rice thief gang. I'm not completely sure on that, but they're bad guys. And then there's some guy who gets killed, some sort of sexual situation. It might be the mother, it might be Lady Snowblood. I think the mother might have killed him, but he's the bad guy with a wart on his face, so she's getting all sexy with him, and then she gets a knife and stabs him. So word to the wise, if you're going to have some sort of sexual situation with a lady, if you're going to start snuggling, make sure there's no knives around, because you get on top and then you don't see a hand moving, and then a knife comes barreling down into your spine and you're dead. And it's not good. You don't want that kind of thing going on. So she has some sex. And then there's a lot of other sex scenes, because this lady wants to get pregnant so she can tell her baby, you have to take vengeance for me. So she gets pregnant after sleeping with 3 or 4 guys or so. And then we are back in the birthing situation. There's all these ladies around. They're all waiting. They're all horrified, because they're like, this is a demonic birth situation. We know this baby's going to come out looking for vengeance, and this baby is holding on for dear life because she is super, I don't know. What would you say? You'd say, like, this baby has a goal. This baby is ready to kill, and she's going to start by killing her mom. So the baby comes out, the mom dies, and the baby starts crying about it. And then we see a shot of the mom steaming, like the corpse. It's a real pretty shot. I think it was the image that I saw when I clicked it on HBO Max, which, another aside, I'm trying not to keep too many asides, but I gotta make this one. I had to watch this one no subs, but HBO Max doesn't have a no subs option. Like, you can't just turn it off. They're like, we're gonna force feed this to you. So I have to do the pillow method, which I've discussed before in different episodes. That's where you put a pillow in front of the TV, right? To block out a decent amount of it. And usually it really jacks up a movie. This, it didn't really matter, because Lady Snowblood is a good movie. However, I know someone out there probably has a connection with HBO. Tell them to just give the option to cut out the subtitles, because watching a movie that way sucks. Okay, now getting back from the aside, where was I? Oh, okay. The mom dies after she names the baby. She names the baby Lady Snowblood. Then she dies. We get the steaming corpse situation. we get the baby crying, and then we cut to some other time frame where Lady Snowblood Sensei is ringing a bell. He's ringing this bell. There's some narration. And then the sensei trains girl Snowblood. She's not Lady at this point, but her name's still Lady Snowblood. And she starts by being trained with the barrel technique. And that's where you're in a barrel, you roll down a hill, you listen to Donkey Kong music, and you try to stay in the barrel as long as possible. Well, she falls out of the barrel, so she fails that first one. That's the first one that she has to do. Then there's the weed whacking training, which we already went over. She goes through a field, starts whacking at the weeds to cut them down, which landscaping is very important, so that's going to be very good for your training. And then there's the tied together by a rope sword practice where he kicks her. Okay, so this old guy's fighting like this, 12-year-old or some little girl, and he ties them to each other, and he just, like, wails on her, basically. He doesn't really hit her very much, but he like, makes it sure, I'm your sensei, I'm gonna whoop you. And then it's like, okay, and then there's a final fight, and the final fight is with the girl versus the guy, but the guy has a sword, and the girl doesn't, and she's a little girl. So it's like, okay. So girl Snowblood, she decides, I'm going to get naked. I'm going to use the get naked technique to distract him. And it works because, I don't know, she gets cut and she looks at her arm and starts drinking the blood. And then it sees like this guy's eyes. And this guy looks like, what'd you say, a Japanese Christopher Walken almost. Okay? So the sensei looks like him. And he has like this weird smile, like, I don't know. He just witnessed. I was going to use that joke with the lady who falls over in the boat and Christopher Walken was there, but I forgot her name. So that one doesn't work. But anyway, he's got this weird look on his face when like the girl Snowblood gets naked. And you don't really see anything, thank God. That was weird. And Lady Snowblood, when she's grown up and you might want to see something, you don't see anything. So it's like, this was an odd. If there's anything I'm going to detract from this, it's the get naked and suck your blood technique makes no sense. And it's a little talky at times. But either way, the final fight goes on. Then he's like, you did what I needed you to do. I needed you to do. You got naked and you sucked your blood after I cut you. Now let's do the barrel roll technique thing again. So she gets put in the barrel and she rolls down the hill again. And this time she makes it all the way and he sword swipes the barrel at the very end and she jumps out and she's like, I have mastered this technique. This is a bizarre way to train someone, but it's awesome. So, okay, I'll buy it. Then we go back to Lady Snowblood praying, a bit of praying in cemeteries and everything. Then we get a basket weaving girl scene. The basket weaving girl is important because basket weaving girl, BWG, by the way, in my notes, she's going to be the one taking vengeance on Lady Snowblood later. Because she's got a sick father who is a degenerate, gambling degenerate, right? That's what they call him when you're a degenerate. You're addicted to gambling. And he's coughing and he's and all that stuff. And he's trying to drink sake all the time. And she's trying to cheer him up. And then Lady Snowblood at the same time, she's visiting a beach around the same area. And then we go back to basket weaving girl. And she's weaving a basket. And she goes to the ocean, the beach area, and throws it over a cliff. For no reason whatsoever. She just throws it into the ocean. She's like, I made this for you. Okay. And then she runs into Lady Snowblood. And they have like a little cute meet situation. They meet each other and they're nice. I think basket weaving girl gives Lady Snowblood a hairpin. Is that right? Like a chopstick for your hair. So she gives that to her and then she leaves. Now, the sick father, he gets a visit from these punks. Now, sick father, by the way, is one of the Rice Gang punks. But he hasn't fared very well in his life, in his situation, because he was a degenerate. So, sick father gets visited by these two punks who are like, you want to gamble more? We know you're a degenerate. And he's like, okay. So they talk a little bit, and he decides, I'm going to go to a degenerate gambling den. And we see Lady Snowblood there. Lady Snowblood is glaring at him. It's all eyes. This movie's all eyes with her. She doesn't talk very much. And she does this, intense, I'm gonna rustle your jimmies look the entire damn movie. She doesn't have kind eyes. She has, like, I'm going to kill you eyes. And her eyes are just totally pissed the entire time. She's staring at people going, yeah. So she's staring at the sick, degenerate father who's gambling. And they're playing some sort of dice game. I have no idea. Like, you write down some sort of number. Lady Snowblood, it's got dice. There's a bunch of people there. It's a den, you know. And this is when the sick father gets caught cheating. Or would you say trying to cheat, because he got caught. And it's not good. So the punks who got him end up interrogating him. They throw knives at him as their interrogation. Just throwing knives at him. And Lady Snowblood, who was there for some reason, she comes in and she's like, I'm here for some reason, but I need you to stop messing with this sick father, the basket weaving girl's father, because I gotta kill him. And they're like, okay. She's like, I need vengeance. Can I get vengeance from my mother? And she explains the whole situation. All right. So they leave. And then the sick father, he goes to a different room to get drinks. It's like, okay. All right. Didn't you hear the whole vengeance thing? But you're like, I'm going to get some drinks. I'm just going to calm down. Lady Snowblood talks to, I think, a prostitute or basket weaving girl. I couldn't tell. And that's just a brief conversation. It has no meaning here or there or whatsoever. Next, Lady Snowblood is talking to the sick father, and they're in the restaurant where the sick father's drinking a little bit. And she's like, you're going to come with me. We're going to go to the beach. And sick father's like, okay, I'm going to make a confession. So he makes a confession to her. And she's like, I know. We're going to go to this beach. And then she decides, I'm going to kill you. And she gets out like her sword. And he starts begging because he's a degenerate and a coward and he's drunk and everything. So he begs, and then she uses the sword through the chest slice technique. And it's really cool because we're at this weird above angle diagonal, and we can see the father, and she takes out the sword and cuts him, and then it zooms out really fast because I guess it was really far zoomed in, and you see the beach and you see him die along on it, and it's in the morning, so then it's all against rocks and it's blue and it's really pretty. Like I said, this movie's beautiful. So it zooms out really quick. He dies. He splurts out blood everywhere. This movie's all about splurting blood and blood going everywhere. Blood goes into the ocean. He basically makes the entire ocean bloody. It's all red and stuff. It's very stylistic and cool. And it's almost too much, but it's just the right amount, right? And this is the kind of violence I like. This is stylistic, fun violence, not funny, unfunny games, shotgun to the head violence of a kid. That sucked. This is cool. This is swords. Now we get that really cool bird eye view, seeing everything shot, and he dies in the water, so we see Lady Snowblood and her eyes of vengeance, and you're like, yeah. I think there's 2 down, maybe 3, and there's at least 2 down at this point. So she grabs the body and climbs up the cliff side, or up the beach, and she goes to that cliff where the basket weaving girl threw the basket off, and she throws the father off, and basket weaving girl doesn't know anything yet, but she'll find out later. She'll get her vengeance. She'll be pissed. All right. We go to a huge cemetery, and Lady Snowblood's at the cemetery at this point. She's at the grave of one of her mother's assaulters, and she's pissed. So she takes out her sword and hits the headstone and breaks off some of her sword and walks away. And at this point, there's this bulky-haired writer dude. And the writer dude and her pass each other, and they kind of meet, but they kind of don't really meet. And this guy looks at her and he's like, And then he goes over toward the grave and he's like, And then you're like, And then that's how that goes. Okay, so after how that goes, Lady Snowblood visits the poor village king again and his ilk. And they talk a bit, and she's mad because she couldn't kill the already dead guy. And there's some more talking, and then moving on. Let's go after that. Then Lady Snowblood gets followed by the writer, the bulky-haired writer dude, okay? she's strolling down the streets and he's following her. So she's like, ninja style. So she hides real quick and he's following and he can't tell where she is. And then she comes out of the shadows like, why are you following me? And then he's like, I have been following your exploits. I like your killing technique. And I'm also a writer and I'd like to interview you. And someday I want to make a newspaper MAGA, right? MAGA. I'm doing this cartoon stuff and I want to make your story. And she's like, okay, well, here you go. This is what I've done. And the writer goes, awesome. And so it's a writing situation. It's like one of these montages where he's writing for a little bit and he's selling newspapers and the story spreads. So that's happening. At the same time, Lady Snowblood visits her old sensei, the barrel dude. And there's a paper mache elephant there for some reason. Do elephants have much to do with Japanese culture? But there's a paper mache elephant. And then she talks to the sensei, and he's in his sensei temple, and he's cooking some fish, and it looks pretty delicious, not gonna lie. He's cooking some fish, and he's laughing, and he's talking to her, and he's probably lecturing about, not killing the dead guy already. How can you not do that? And she's getting mad. So she leaves. Then we see some girls circled around another girl singing this bullying song, and there's some more narration. And Lady Snowblood looks at all the girls bullying the one little girl as they're doing Ring Around the Rosie. But they're singing you suck kind of thing. And Lady Snowblood is, you see it in her eyes. She's pissed. And there's some narration. And at this point, after all this stuff, she visits her sensei. He laughs at her. There's the bullying situation. We go back and we see this police gang situation. This police gang visits the writer. But, they're going to visit the writer. But BWG, the basket weaving girl, that chick is over there, and she's found out about Lady Snowblood, so she goes over, and she talks to the writer, and she's like, I need to know where this lady is, because I vowed vengeance, and you need to tell me your source. And he's like, I don't do that. I don't tell you my source. And she gets mad, and she's talking at him. And the police gang comes in, and they're like, we're going to take you away, because we need to get your source. And she's like, I need the source, and she walks out. The basket weaving chick, and the writer's like, I'll never tell you my source. So the police gang takes the writer, and they're like, we're going to beat you up now. So they beat him up. And that's when we see the lady, the Rice Gang lady from the very beginning. She shows up, and she's like, I'm the penultimate boss. I'm here, and my police punks, these guys who look like police guys, and they're going to mess you up. So they mess him up. They torture the writer a bit, and they beat him up pretty bad. I'm like, oh no, not the Magna dude. So he's getting beat up. He even gets waterboarded, and I'm like, ooh, that's not, I've heard that's unpleasant, right? You don't want to break the Geneva, is it? Nah, whatever. But you don't want to water torture somebody. They board him, and there's no board. They just put his head in a bucket and try to drown him. You'd think there would be a board. There isn't. Alright, so they try to drown him a little bit, and this is when they're torturing him, and it's not really working. So the lady, the Rice Gang lady, who's got this wicked smile and looks evil, she leaves the place. She goes to a closet so she can start praying, and in this closet she starts doing voodoo chants, because she's afraid Lady Snowblood is going to kill her. And it's kind of odd. And while she's over here busy voodoo chanting, Lady Snowblood does show up, and she uses the paracel technique. So the writer's getting tortured in one room. She comes outside. Lady Snowblood comes outside of it in this little mansion area, and she twirls her paracel, and it comes floating down. And the police punk gang, half of them are outside, half of them are torturing. Well, it'd be more I'd say half are outside, a quarter are torturing, and then a quarter are just kind of in their sleeping quarters. Okay, so half are outside, and the parasol comes in and it distracts them, and then we see Lady Snowblood, and she makes an entrance, and they're like, oh shit, and then she fights this police gang outside in the snow and messes them up. and she's fight. Is there snow there? I might have misspoke. But she's fighting them, and she kills like half the police gang and then comes into the torture room building. And when she comes in, she gets fired at with a gun because the voodoo lady decided, I'm done with voodoo, I'm going to use guns. So she's up on the second floor, and she's firing at Lady Snowblood, and then they have some sort of like standoff situation. Lady Snowblood, she goes, I am going to jump from here to the second floor. So she jumps it, and the writer's there held at like gunpoint, and he's starting to creep away. So the voodoo chick decides to shoot at him, but Lady Snowblood decides, I'm going to cut you now. So she cuts the lady, and the lady falls down to the first floor. And at the first floor, she's like hits it pretty hard. The rest of the police gang come in, right? And they come in and they're like, we will fight you. And the Rice gang member lady chick, right? How many, this lady scurries off, okay? She runs away, and the police gang that she's got is down there. Well, Lady Snowblood, I think she takes the hairpin from her hair, and she looks down and sees this whole sack of cayenne pepper. So she throws her hairpin. The cayenne pepper explodes, and it blinds everybody and burns their skin, whatnot. And she jumps down. She jumps from the second floor now to the first floor and cuts him up really good and kills him. And she's looking around for the lady, the Rice gang member that she needs to kill now. And she's like, oh no, it's not here. Ah, crap. I gotta find her now. So she's going from building to building because I think this is like a gang complex, and it's really pretty intense. It's like, where is the fight going to happen situation? However, she opens up a door and sees a body hanging, and the Rice gang lady took the hangman's way out. So she's hanging there, all dead, and Lady Snowblood is pissed. The writers finally come back, found her, and is looking at the hanging body and is like, you didn't get it, did you? And Lady Snowblood gets really mad and takes out her sword and cuts her in half, right? So she cuts her in half, and you see a bunch of blood just spilling down. And then you see a curtain kind of dropping. The curtain falls in front of the screen, and you're like, we are done. However, we are not done. And the movie keeps going, and they're licking their wounds and cleaning themselves by the ocean. And you're like, something's not right here. We just saw a curtain fall down, and now they're saying we're not done with this. What is going on? Well, there's some stuff in between. It's not very important. There's just like some situations. However, the writer does get a visit from this cool sunglasses guy. He visits the writer, and he tells him, I am the final boss, and I need you to let Lady Snowblood know. So the writer lets Lady Snowblood know there's a final boss. You cut the penultimate boss in half, but there is a final boss. He told me he's going to be at this mansion at this party, and he wants you to go. So they go to this mansion, and there's this party. And at the mansion, it starts snowing. Lady Snowblood looks at the snow and is like, snow, fitting. I'm going to go to this party. So she goes in the party while the writer is still in the handsome carriage. And he's like, I'm going to get this carriage parked. You go into there. And she's like, okay. And then she goes in. She's like, oh, it's a masquerade ball. I better put one of these masks on my face. So she puts a mask on her face. She's looking around. She's like, there's dancing now, but does this become all eyes wide open a little bit? Or is it eyes wide shut? Yeah, eyes wide shut a little bit later on. There's something going to get a little freaky in here. And she's like, I don't know. I'm going to sit down and just look for people. I'm going to look for this glasses dude. And then, as she's searching the crowd, she finds her target. And he sees her, and he goes through a wall, a push wall. He gets out of there. He skedaddles. And then she follows him. She goes into this like back room, I think a sex area. And they have a little scuffle. They have a little fight. And she makes quick work of him. But the writer comes in. And the writer looks and he goes, wait, before you double kill him, because she's going to kill him again. She killed him. He falls on a couch. And then she's going to like stab him through the heart to make sure he doesn't become a vampire. But the writer says, wait. And then goes over to it and sees the guy's face and like takes off the fake facial hair and takes off a Mission Impossible style mask. And it's not our guy. It's an imposter. It's some other random dude. And you go, okay, this isn't good. And they're looking around the room. And they see this mirror. And they're like, that must be a two-way mirror. So the writer picks up a chair and throws it through the mirror. And it breaks. And this is kind of weird, too. Because it breaks and we don't see anybody in there. And then we see the sunglasses guy who checks into the other room because he's like, there's a commotion, I gotta check. And then he runs the other way. And they're like, the sunglasses guy for sure is in the other room. Let's follow him. So they go into the other room. And it's like a camera room, right? Where you have a camera and you're watching the whoopee in the one room. Okay? They go into that room, and then they start going out a hall. And in the hall, there's two branching paths. There's a right path and a left path. So Lady Snowblood's like, I'm going right. You go left, writer. And he's like, you got it, ma'am. So he goes left, she goes right. She goes up the stairs and comes to a balcony, which is in the ballroom. There's nobody there. But she looks over at the other balcony, where the writer has gone. And there's a scuffle between the writer and the sunglasses man. But the sunglasses man's got a gun. And this means the writer is at gunpoint. The writer attacks, though, because he's got a sword. So he attacks, but he gets shot. When he gets shot, he kind of stumbles into the sunglasses guy and falls on him. And he's like, I'm going to hold you. Lady Snowblood, come over here. So Lady Snowblood does I'm going to jump across the room technique. So she jumps across the room. I think she grabs something midway and kind of swings. There's a bit of Donkey Kong techniques in this movie. So she swings across, jumps over there, and the writer's still got this guy held. And sunglasses guy is like really upset about this, so he shoots the writer a couple more times. And Lady Snowblood makes the decision to skewer them both. So she takes out her sword, stabs both of them, takes out her sword again, and the writer falls over. The sunglasses guy is like on his last leg. He's all walking around stumbly. And Lady Snowblood is going to deliver the final blow as she's getting herself ready to slice him. He shoots her, I think probably in the kidney or stomach or something. He shoots her fatally. Maybe fatally. We don't know yet. But she takes the sword and cuts him. And he falls from the balcony all the way down to the floor. There's an American flag and Japanese flag, and he grabs the Japanese flag as he's falling, and the American one stands up strong, right? Which I don't know if some sort of symbolism thing, but he falls, hits the ground, and he's dead, and all the party goers are at this point freaking out. They're like, what is going on? And then we see Lady Snowblood, and she's like, I gotta leave here. I've been shot, and I've been messed up. So she leaves the mansion. As she's leaving the mansion, it's snowing, it's pretty, and she's like walking. She's going as slow as she can. And this is our thing where the music's kind of going up, and you're like, she made it. But basket weaving girl walks by her and stabs her and looks at her, and she's like, I vowed vengeance. You killed my degenerate father. Now you must die. And she takes out the knife and keeps walking. Lady Snowblood at this point's like, okay. I'm just going to keep walking down this path. Maybe there's a garden I can die in or something. So she walks down the path, and she's walking for a little bit, and then she decides, like, I'm going to lay here in the snow. So she lays in the snow face down. And you're like, oh no, Lady Snowblood's gone. But she looks up after, like, tasting the snow. And you see the determination in her eyes to go on. And it's really beautiful shot at the end. And then it ends. And you're like, wow, that was a good movie. That's all. I think I made the point spoiling the movie. Like, that's it, by the way. So, and there's a second one. So I'm pretty sure she didn't die unless it's like Lady Snowblood's baby as well. It's an interesting movie. I thought it was really good. Hard 5 out of 5. Right. I'm going to do that. Hard 5 out of 5. Even thinking about it. I watched it twice. And the first time I was like, I don't know. And then the second time I was like, definitely a 5. And now just talking about it, hard 5 out of 5. It was a fun movie, stylistically beautiful. It definitely inspired, famous foot fetishist. It's a really good vengeance movie. A fun one. I definitely suggest people watch it. I definitely suggest it. The music's good. It looks great. Lady Snowblood's acting's good. Everyone's acting's pretty good. There's only a couple parts from like this is kind of drawn out, but not too bad. And weird things that I'm like, I don't know what that means. However, you don't really need to see it with subtitles to kind of get like the idea. Even though it kind of jumps back and forth a little bit with flashbacks and flash forward. Well, not really flash forwards, just back in the present. Yeah, you don't really need to worry about too much of that. It's a good movie. I'd say there's no subs, no dubs option is good anyway. I'm sure the writing's good. Hopefully, the writing. What if the writing's just terrible and it's like, no, it's better to watch it without knowing what they're saying. But I doubt it. It looked like a pretty good movie. Not too talky, a lot of violence, a lot of good violence, like I said. And it looks great, it's fast, it was fun. 5 out of 5, hard 5 out of 5. That's it. I'm Casey Kamikaze Kidd, blowing up all over this bitch. Take it away, Baka Boy. That's life. And then there's probably like XX and XXX.com. I wouldn't go to those websites. Just stick with X. That's probably your best bet, or Twitter. You could still type in Twitter and just find everything. This X nonsense, it's just, yeah. I don't know. Add a rebranding for no reason, just like letters, website letters, right? Is the ultimate goal is there's gonna be A, B. What if you had Z.com and you're like, I'm better than X, or X, Y, I'm one better than Z, or Z, A, or AA.com, or something, X is just stupid. But it's Japan, so they're the bad guys, and they're probably going, oh, no, I don't want to, don't make, I can't look like a jerk on this. Cut all that stuff out, Baka Boy. We're just gonna move on, right? At this point, you don't wanna do that. And you get back to the news bulletin. Sushi's good, by the way. I really like sushi. Uh, that's what I know about people's cultures, is like their food, and their food that I eat every once in a while. So, there you go. And then cooking it on the grill, right? The flat top. Is that even a Japanese thing, or is that more of an American thing? That's what you got to think about. Is when they do the onions and they make the lava come up with the soy sauce and they call it the volcano, is that an American thing, or is that directly taken from Japan? I don't know. That's something we should probably work out.